Take a medieval village and remove one animal. Not the pigs, not the chickens, the horse. Within a single season, that village starves. Almost everything your ancestors built in the year 1300 was sitting on the back of a horse. And most people alive today have no idea how close that whole world came to never existing at all. Think about what a horse actually did for them. It pulled the plough that broke open heavy northern soil. It carried grain to the mill and flour back again. It moved timber, stone, wool, salt, and iron along roads that were often little more than mud. It carried messages between towns in hours instead of days. It carried soldiers. It carried tax collectors. It carried news of the harvest and news of the plague. Strip that out, and the medieval economy does not slow down. It stops. The historian Lynn Jr. argued that a handful of quiet inventions reshaped medieval Europe more than any king did. The heavy plough, the horse collar that let an animal pull with its shoulders instead of its throat. Iron horseshoes. None of them are dramatic. All of them are useless without the animal in the middle. So here is a strange question. What if that animal had been something else? Imagine the world of 1300 exactly as it was. The castles, the cathedrals, the crop rotations, the guilds. Then take every horse out of it and put a dinosaur in its place. Not as a fantasy, as an engineering problem, because the moment you try to actually run a medieval village on dinosaurs, something interesting happens. You start to understand why your ancestors ended up with horses in the first place, and why that was never a choice at all. Start with food. A working medieval horse ate somewhere around 10 to 15 kilograms of dry feed a day, mostly grass, hay, and oats. That sounds like a lot until you notice what it means. A horse eats the one thing that grows by itself in every field, on every roadside, on every patch of land too poor to farm. Sunlight becomes grass. Grass becomes labor. Now put a predator in that harness. A large carnivorous dinosaur, at the low estimates, would have needed the equivalent of a full-grown cow every week or two. Your village does not have that. Your village barely has enough meat to get its own people through winter. Feeding one working animal would mean feeding it your entire food supply, and the animal produces nothing you can eat in return. What about the plant eaters then? Surely a triceratops or a duck-billed hadrosaur solves that. It solves the diet. It creates a worse problem. A hadrosaur weighed around 3 tons. Some sauropods weighed 30 or more. Everything scales with that. The barn, the gate, the bridge over the stream, the road, the amount of forage a single animal strips from the land every day. A creature that size does not fit into a farming system built by people who measure their land in what one family can walk across. And you still have not reached the real problem. Have you ever wondered why a foal can stand within an hour of being born? That single fact carries more weight than almost anything else in this story. A mare carries one foal for about 11 months. It is born large, eyed open, legs working. Within a day, it follows the herd. Within 3 years, it can work. One mother, one calf, a short wait, and a usable animal. Dinosaurs did not do that. They laid eggs. Even the largest sauropods, animals weighing tens of tons, hatched from eggs no bigger than a football. That is not a small detail. It means the gap between a newborn and a working adult is enormous, and something has to survive that gap. The paleontologist Gregory Erickson worked out dinosaur growth rates by cutting into fossil bone and counting the growth lines inside, the same way you would read the rings of a tree. His work on Tyrannosaurus found an animal that took roughly 2 decades to reach full size, with a violent growth spurt in its teenage years. 20 years for one animal. A medieval peasant could not wait 20 years. Life expectancy at birth in that world hovered somewhere around 30. You could raise an animal that outlived your ability to use it and gain nothing. There is one more barrier, and it is the one people never think of. It has nothing to do with size or diet at all. It is temperament. Horses live in herds with a settled social order. They follow. They accept a leader. That instinct is exactly what a human hand hooks into. When you lead a horse, you are not overpowering it. You are stepping into a slot that already exists in its mind. The geographer Jared Diamond laid this out plainly. Out of roughly 148 large land mammals that were candidates for domestication, humans succeeded with 14. 14. Every failure failed for a reason. Wrong diet, slow growth, panic response, no social hierarchy, a tendency to kill each other in captivity. Zebras look like horses. Zebras have never been domesticated at scale because they bite and do not let go. So what are the odds that a dinosaur, separated from your ancestors by 66 million years of completely independent evolution, happens to have the exact social wiring that a human can slip into? Nobody knows. That is honest. Some fossil trackways suggest certain species moved in groups, and some nesting sites suggest parents returning to their young. But group movement is not hierarchy, and none of it tells you whether an animal would tolerate a rope. Now look at what your ancestors actually got, and how narrowly they got it. Recent genetic work led by Ludovic Orlando traced almost every domestic horse alive today back to a single population on the steppes north of the Black Sea and the Caspian, around 4,200 years ago. One region, one window in time. From there, that lineage spread across Eurasia and replaced nearly everything else. The medieval knight, the plough team, the postal rider, the mill, the cathedral built from quarried stone hauled overland. All of it descends from that one lucky population. And here is the part that should sit with you. Diamond's larger point was never really about animals. It was about geography. Eurasia happened to contain the right creatures. Large, calm, fast breeding, plant eating, herd following. Sub-Saharan Africa had extraordinary wildlife and almost nothing that fit. The Americas lost most of their large mammals thousands of years earlier. Australia had none to begin with. Civilisations did not rise where people were cleverer. They rose where the animals cooperated. So the honest answer to the question is not that a medieval world running on dinosaurs would have looked stranger. It is that there would have been no medieval world to look at. No plough teams means no grain surplus. No grain surplus means no towns. No towns means no guilds. No universities. No cathedrals. No armies that march further than they can walk. You do not get castles. You get scattered people, farming by hand, going nowhere. Everything you were taught to see as human achievement was quietly leaning on an animal that agreed to be led, which raises a question worth carrying around with you. How much of what you call progress was actually a decision, and how much of it was a species you happened to find standing in a field? Take a medieval village and remove one animal, and the village starves. Take that animal out of history entirely, and there was never a village at all.